Hi, everybody. Hopefully you'll enjoy the presentations today. I know we're at the end of the day, and thank you for staying awake for it. Yes, last year I was here, and we talked a little bit. We started to talk about how Equinix is starting to think about open source ecosystem and what we need to do. And what I'd like to do today is just give you an update of where we are and what we think that looks like. This is a journey for a lot of us of how we build the next generation architecture for data centers and networks. And I feel really good about the fact that we're making tremendous progress as a community and as an industry. And let me share with you some of the thoughts we have. So first of all, I think you know Equinix, but we are a global data center company. We're a multi-tenant data center company. So we have the biggest clouds and networks and financial services and enterprises all come in. We continue to expand the platform. We're going to have over 179 data centers with the Verizon acquisition that we announced by sometime in the second quarter. And we have more and more market expanded. So we feel really fortunate that we have a global platform to deploy. So anything I tell you about is something we'll make available across the globe, which is critical for any kind of deployment to be able to have global reach. So we're going to be in 43 markets around the world. And I think that gets the vast majority of the places people want to go. So what is disaggregation for us? So for us, disaggregation is we want to enable the ecosystem that's showing up here in a lot of places. There's significant announcements everywhere you go this time. Almost every week, there's a new announcement on new hardware, open source ecosystem, or new switch, or new disaggregation option, as well as software, new open source software. We call it disaggregation, and I think you know that term very well. You want to be able to make the hardware innovation and interchangeability of open source independent from the software and support both. For most companies who talk to you, they would have picked one software or one hardware platform because they're building one network. The challenge for us is to be able to support dozens of those because everybody who comes in have already an SDN controller or they have a hardware option, and we need to be able to make that available so we can open up the community for these people. So first of all, we are a member of TIP, the Telecom Infrastructure Project, especially on the open optical packet transport. I myself chair that with Hans-Jürgen. And then we're really focused on high-speed data center interconnect. And we have tested the open optical white boxes and switches. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. We are looking at open network switches and the programmability control of all the interconnection and routing via API integration. And in terms of hardware, we want to enable the OCP data center infrastructure. And since Zaid is next after me, we also probably want to enable the Open 19. And he asked me to say this. I just want to let you know. So the point is that we're not just one ecosystem. We're starting with OCP and the ecosystem, but we're going to continue to add more. And we will continue to participate in hardware, software disaggregation, and ecosystem development, just like ONS here. We see it as one of the key places. So this is what the architecture looks like for us. What we want to be able to do is test and enable both the open source hardware and software at the same time and allow multiple vendors to happen. So in the case of the hardware, we're starting with the OpenRAC v2 from OCP, so we can support compute and storage. And the Wedge 100 is the one we're using for the networking. We use the backpack also from the open optical innovation. And the Voyager switch is the one we're testing at this time. So these are the ones we have, but we're going to add more to them. And what we want to do is enable this architecture in multiple data center and continue to test the connectivity between them back and forth. So the idea here is that not just we have the OCP hardware in OpenRAC v2, but things like Open 19 and others, and people who have different hardware modules can come in and be able to put them in and see all the different hardware, how it's set up. So servers from multiple providers, storage from multiple providers, network equipment from many vendors, and we have hundreds of them making it now, as the same with the optical switching and all the software. In terms of the open switch router and what we feel is what we're championing in terms of openingness and flexibility, here's what we are after, is to have the ability to design the hardware, and it can be any kind of hardware depending on the application you want, with completely open components. And then we would use the Linux, open network Linux, as the kernel and be with SDKs and be able to load different software modules on top. So like the snap out that you heard about from AT&T would be one that we tested. But we want to support many of those that go in so that we're not limiting ourselves to a single software or a single function. And through this architecture, we see the ability of all the different functions to work together through the SDK and the API. So because that's one of the things that nobody in the industry is testing, how all these different open source software, as well as all the different options of open hardware, are going to work together and interoperate. And we'll create that lab and make it available for people to come in. This equipment is all connected to our internet exchanges as well as cloud exchange, so people will be able to test against the entire internet of the globe and all the connectivity and all the cloud providers that we have in our data centers. I think this is going to be critical in terms of enabling the open source hardware and software, and this architecture is the one we support and endorse. Many other architectures are good, but this is the one we feel would scale in our world, which is this ecosystem-centric, multiple networks and clouds, and how they all need to be together with many creators of hardware options. And the way you would be able to use it, with REST APIs, you can have different SDN controllers all are able to control this infrastructure and be able to control everywhere from physically how the optical and routing and switching components all the way to the different functions that exist in the software. So you could use ONOS, you could use Open Daylight, any kind of SDN controller would be able to use the REST APIs and control this infrastructure, which is what we feel is going to be needed to enable this ecosystem. You would just put in whatever use case you want, you'll create a module, use the controllers, and be able to enable it. And these use cases could be anything between 2 data centers. Inside 1 data center, you can combine optics and routing, or just optics or switching. So all the stuff, in our view, this is how all the benefits of open hardware and software becomes available when you can do it in an open world where you could connect to all the different internet networks and clouds out there. As the different networks, as you heard from many of them, continue to deploy the next generation architecture, we are working with many of them to be available at Equinix, so you could use this to connect to them and connect to multiple providers. And one of the things we just tested was the open line system using completely open optical switches between 2 of our data centers. We did it jointly with Facebook, and we had fantastic results. So the performance of all these open optical modules and switches is equivalent to anything you have there, and we're going to continue to test and publish what we do. We talked about this at OFC, and soon enough we will continue to go down the path, and we will make more announcements in the future when we have a lab available for people to test against. So this is all I had, and I want to make more time for the next 2 presenters. I'm happy to take 1 or 2 questions if somebody has, or pass you to the next 2 presentations. Okay, thank you very much.